when I made Bombay Our City, for instance, it wasn't because I was making a film about the city per se. It was more about how there's a racial distinction between the rich and poor. That how, and that cuts through city and countryside. It's just that what we see in the city is why we're looking. Why inevitably a lot of my films are city based because I live in the city. So it's an accident of my location that I ended up shooting a lot in the city. But when I think about it, in the city, the countryside is represented in the sense that when we look at the slums in the city, it's people who have come to the city from the countryside, a lot of them, because they were pushed out. And so in that sense, we are actually addressing India as a whole, even though we're located in the city. Bombay, for instance, was the textile capital of India, right? But where did the textile workers come from? They all came from the countryside. They were all brought. In fact, they weren't people who voluntarily even came. They were people who were actually brought as the labor force.
Right, right.
As were construction workers, as are many of the so many of these people have been brought from the countryside. Some came out of drought or famine or some natural or man-made disaster. So in that sense, this is a continuum between city and countryside.
We started this film, it's a film I did with Carol Upadhyaya, who's an anthropologist and was working on a larger project. And so the film is one part of it. And to gain entry into these spaces, such as software companies, this is a software company, it's not a call center. It's not easy. They're like security fortresses. And so the sort of form that we've used for that film, we had to actually get their okay on the films. It's a set of 3 films, and we had to get an okay on all 3 films. Each is set in one software company. So we had to make it in a way that we felt we were offering a critique, and yet they didn't think so, and they were okay with agreeing to let us screen it. So at the beginning that happened, and actually later they caught on and they refused to give us telecast rights. But we're allowed to screen it, and they've signed that agreement saying we can screen it in small spaces like this. So I think there are many spaces actually that I'd like to get into at least, or I'd like to see films made about, say for instance, courts or police stations or defense establishments, where it's not easy to just walk in with a camera. It would be really difficult actually to get permission. But these are all public institutions, and we should be allowed to go in and film there.
No. So what is wonderful about Gautam's work is that he's able to get embedded with the group that he's filming, and that in that sense. That's something that I could never do in most cases, because they see through what I'm doing pretty fast.
The class difference.
So mine is a hit and run operation. When I go into those places, I can't stay very long.
To start with, I would say exactly what Anand said, is that I didn't start with any formulations. So it was not a question of deciding to depict an urban space versus a rural, or deciding to do a listing of this, that, or the other space. With the lens through the lens of gender. So almost like any other filmmaker, I did something I started working on which was coming out of a personal experience, certainly. And a certain amount of research was done, fairly intensive research, to actually see 2 things. One is to do as much of exposing oneself to different ideas as possible, and the other was also to try and create a canvas to sort of see how to contain oneself,
You're rendering a narrative of something that you have understood in your terms, just like somebody else might have been writing a story, or somebody might be writing a book. So the question of whether or not it makes an impact, which itself is a very kind of, because art, the whole idea of art is that it renders, it gives you an opportunity to interrogate binaries in the first place. Yeah. So which is that one thing which you don't have in other aspects. So by being a documentary filmmaker, if I were to put you in that cast you, so to speak, then, and if I were to say that yes, there is, the medium is the message, is not the point here. You've shown me Apna Shahar, and this leaves a message. It doesn't leave a message, but it touches somebody in some way, and maybe doesn't touch somebody in some other ways. You're telling a story in the way you understand. Would that make you feel okay enough? That's when you leave it there?
Well, I personally wouldn't be able to answer that in a yes or no, because I would in fact then go further. And I personally would say that I think we need to get rid of these terms, even documentary and fiction and so on. Mm-hmm. There are so many films today which are just films. I mean, they are part, even Mera Apna Shehar is part fiction and part documentary, but it's not docu-fiction, it's not docu-drama, it's none of those terms. It's just a film. So, I don't know, yes, any film is an expression, and maybe some people will get something out of it.